Hello, I'm Alex the Hunted. If there is one thing Godzilla is known for, apart from the kaiju monster fights, the men in rubber suits, the city destruction, the bad Japanese dubbing, and sometimes very questionable special effects, somewhere in that list would be amazing soundtracks. When you think about it, the Godzilla series has some really diverse and amazing soundtracks, from big bombastic orchestral pieces to mystical fantasy music, and even jazz is in there. These are my top 10 favourite Godzilla soundtracks. I was going to do top 10 favourite single tracks, but I think overall soundtracks is better. I've got a bit of rules for these ones. These are the soundtracks as a whole, every single track, and while some of these soundtracks reuse or remake soundtracks from other movies, I'm judging them as a soundtrack as a whole. I might do singular tracks at some point, but anyway, let's begin, shall we, with number 10. By the time the Heisei era had got to Godzilla vs Space Godzilla, the Heisei era felt, well, tired. However, the soundtrack is the one exception. This is one of the few Godzilla soundtracks that doesn't have the original theme, the Godzilla March. The Godzilla March isn't here. In fact, unlike most Heisei era soundtracks, it doesn't remake any track at all. But I really do like Space Godzilla's theme, because it does sound like a more twisted and more evil version of Godzilla's theme. And they use it multiple times with different tempos, depending on the scene. While it isn't a big orchestra like most Heisei era movies, due to the cut budget, there is something really catchy in there. It does have a nice hook, and Godzilla has a nice new theme, which they only use in this movie. This is a way more upbeat Godzilla theme, and that's probably because he's the actual hero in this one. But yes, good soundtrack. Number 9! The first Godzilla soundtrack, while I do think most of these tracks have been done better in later movies, the first Godzilla soundtrack really hammers home the tragedy of this dark, dark movie. It's just haunting. But it does have a slight glimmer of hope in it, in some of these tracks, like the military theme. That even though they are losing, it does sort of feel like a bit of pride and hopefulness in their theme. And then you have the Godzilla theme itself, the Godzilla March. While this is the first time we have it, and it isn't the best version of the Godzilla March in my opinion, it does have this dark and tragic feel to it, and it's even off key at times, like even Godzilla's destructive power is even affecting the soundtrack. And then you have A Prayer for Peace, which will just make you depressed. It's like the aftermath of an apocalypse, which, well, that's basically what Godzilla is. Just like you're looking over all this destruction and there's nothing really you can do, it's just tragic. And it's a great start to the series. Number 8. For Godzilla's 50th, you would have thought they'd try a big orchestral celebration of the soundtrack and do real new versions of classic themes, but no, they go for a techno dance music theme for this one. Like, it's really odd that they went this way for the 50th movie, but I really do like it. The best way to sum up the soundtrack is, it's the best soundtrack to go on a run or be at the gym at. It has a very high tempo, it's very fast and very fun, much like Godzilla Final Wars. It also really complements the movie very well because it's a very fast and high tempo music that just adds more energy to these fight scenes and action scenes. It just makes them way more exciting. It's very much like Godzilla Final Wars. It's not really good, but it's very fun and it's a great listen. It just makes you happy. It'll put you in a happy mood. Or if you're going on a run, you know, put the soundtrack on. I mean, I don't run. Jesus Christ, look at me. Number 7. Yes, I know this soundtrack reuses a lot of tracks, and yes, there isn't a lot of new tracks, but hey, no one complains when movies use songs from the 80s like they have been in every single movie since Kingsman and Guardians of the Galaxy. Also, using old tracks really fits this. It gives this movie more of a legacy even though it's the most recent live-action Godzilla movie to come out of Japan. Using old tracks and old sound effects just sort of fits. And while some new tracks are rare, they are just some of the best tracks in the entire franchise. Who Will Know and Persecution of the Masses are two of the best tracks in the entire franchise. They are just so dramatic and just full of dread, fear and evil. And apparently they're coming from Godzilla's point of view, which really adds a new layer to the soundtrack. And using old tracks respects the legacy of Godzilla while also making this new experimental Godzilla fit in with the classics. Number 6. Isn't it interesting that the anniversary movies, they try something different with the soundtrack, and with Godzilla's 20th anniversary movie, Godzilla vs Mechagodzilla, they went for a jazz theme, and I really enjoy it. It really fits this just 70s feel of Godzilla and 70s movie. The jazz is really catchy and is a real earworm. The tracks that play through the fight scenes will just stay with you for a long time, and they're really upbeat for some reason. When it's Mechagodzilla just beating the shit out of everyone. And it has an amazing trumpet section which really stands out, because usually in a Godzilla soundtrack the brass section is more low and foreboding, you get more of a bass, deep noise from them. But no, with this one they're using trumpets and it's very high pitched and high paced, and I just love it. Also, I really love the build-up track. It really builds up the height of these two going at it. It's like Godzilla Final Wars soundtrack. It's very high energy and very fun, and that's just something I like about soundtracks, if they're nice and fun, even in a Godzilla movie. Number 5. Much like the original, it's haunting, foreboding and heartbreaking. Godzilla vs. Destroyer's soundtrack fits the final ending of the Heisei era very well. And for what was supposed to be Godzilla's final movie, it's not just remaking old tracks, it has a completely new soundtrack and it's some of the darkest tracks in the entire franchise. Destroyer's theme just sounds so evil and threatening, while Godzilla's theme sounds more deeper and slower than his usual theme, almost like he's dying, which of course throughout the movie he is. And then there's Godzilla Jr.'s theme, which just makes you feel so sad and just so bad for this little guy, with all the violins just making you feel so sorry for everything that's happening to him. This soundtrack also has my favourite version of the Godzilla March. It's a combination of many Godzilla marches, but it's the one track that also has the amazing ending sting that I like to play in my videos every now and then. And of course we have to talk about Requiem, the track that played during Godzilla's death, and it just really sells the tragedy of this character that we know and love dying in front of you. I would have loved to have seen the reaction in cinemas to this moment when the movie first came out. It's just so tragic. And that's what really gives you a gut punch of a haunting choir as slow music plays over this death of an iconic character. This soundtrack is great. It's not the best one to listen to, casually, because you'll just feel terrible at the end of it. But you can't deny how good it is. Number 4. Like I should put which I think is the best MonsterVerse soundtrack, well, from the Godzilla movies anyway, and I think that's Godzilla King of the Monsters. I think it's perfect at remaking classic Godzilla tracks while also bringing new interpretations and new versions of classic tracks as well. While I don't really like the chanting, especially in Ghidorah's theme, the rest of it really works, and being able to hear Godzilla's march being redone with a big Hollywood orchestra just makes you feel so good. Really makes Godzilla feel like the true king that he is, and I love how Mothra's theme is more mystical and majestic, and they do the old Mothra theme from the classic movies, and it really makes her feel like the queen of the monsters. Also, the final track at the end, with Godzilla feeling triumphant, also has this foreboding air to it. As in, yes, Godzilla has won, and he's on our side, but he could change, and no one can really stop him if he turns on us and becomes more aggressive, which I really think is a missed opportunity in Godzilla vs. Kong, but that's for another video. But yeah, that track really fits the final line of the movie of good thing he's on our side, for now. There's a lot of great tracks in the soundtracks, but some of them I'm not really a big fan of, and that brings down the soundtrack as a whole, but in my opinion the soundtrack is mostly really good tracks. I love this soundtrack as a whole. Number 3. How about that? I keep bashing this movie, but there's plenty of it I really do love. Tokyo SOS has some amazing soundtracks. It's probably the best version of the Millennium Godzilla March, and there's just so much I really enjoy about this soundtrack. How each kaiju has their own theme when they're on screen, and when they're on screen together fighting each other, they blend the soundtracks together, and it just really fits. Well, this is a way more traditional Godzilla soundtrack, with a slow bass and military themes in all the tracks. The big orchestra, I think, is some of the best versions of these traditional themes. Also, the soundtrack has some music which just really works, as with bringing in Mothra, it just got this... When it brings in Mothra, the soundtrack brings in this sort of like air of like a god mystical magic sort of stuff, and I really do love it. Godzilla's march is more low bass and slow to just show how threatening and powerful he is. Well, in theory anyway, this is the weakest Godzilla in Toho movies, but anyway. And Mechagodzilla's Kiryu theme is more of a grand, full piece of pride, like this is a military parade theme. And it works since Mechagodzilla 3 is a military weapon. It really just fits the motif for each kaiju. Well, I'm no musical expert, I just know that I like what I hear, and this is a really great soundtrack for an average movie in my opinion. Number 2. One day I'll do a best list that doesn't include my favourite Godzilla movie, but today isn't that day. Yeah, I love this soundtrack, it just fits this movie so perfectly. It's got a great mystical rhythm to it, and it makes each kaiju feel like gods. And the battle music, oh, is just so good. It makes the battles feel like two titans clashing against each other. And also the kaiju themes just fit each monster really well. Baragon's has this sound of like grinding earth, like he's digging, because he is the god of the earth. Mothra's theme has a calm flow to it because she is the god of water. Yes, Mothra, the flying bug, is the god of water. Thanks Toho for that. And Ghidorah's theme truly fits like the guardian of the sky. It's very light, and you know, he is the god of the sky. But we also have Godzilla's theme, which just sounds so evil. For being one of the most evil Godzillas in all the movies, his theme just really fits this just relentless, like unstoppable object that's going through everything. I also love how the soundtrack is just way more light. It barely uses any brass section at all like most Godzilla soundtracks. It relies more on choirs and vocals and violins, and it just really fits the mythical tone that this whole movie goes for. I mean, you should know by now this is my favourite Godzilla movies, and you know, I'm going to find as many ways as I can to praise it. And now, before we get to number one, let's have some honourable mentions, because this series has some really great soundtracks, and well, not all of them can make it. Number one! The Heisei era has some amazing soundtracks, but man, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2's soundtrack is just so good. It's so close to pure perfection. Everything about it is so good. Godzilla's theme is so good. The remade Rodan theme is really damn good, but the greatest theme of them all is, well, Mechagodzilla's theme. Oh my god, it just feels so metallic and heavy and like a doppelganger of the Godzilla theme, but it's its own thing as well. It's so damn good. This soundtrack is the perfect combination of remaking old tracks while making new ones with their own themes as well. Also, little Godzilla's theme is just so like this little baby creature's got a really rough life ahead of him. I also like how the soundtracks combined with each other when each kaiju is on screen, when they fight each other or they're doing something else. I also like how they do a sort of sad, very low-key version of Rodan's theme when he's giving Godzilla a power boost. It's sort of sad how Rodan's dying, but hopeful at the same time, like he's dying but he's bringing back Godzilla at the same time. It's just so good. It's not the soundtrack I listen to the most, but in terms of quality, I truly think this is the best soundtrack in the Godzilla franchise. And those were my top 10 favourite Godzilla soundtracks. Tell me what you think of them in the comments below. Tell me what your top 10 soundtracks would be. And you know, as always, you can like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. I have a Patreon if you want to support that. And I am Axe the Hunter, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.